So I watched The Last of Us episode 2. My relationship with The Last of Us as a series is complicated. So I'm gonna try to talk about it, what I liked about the episode, what I didn't like about the episode, and my thoughts for the game series and the TV series going forward. So let's get into it. What I loved about the episode, I actually loved the siege battle on Jackson, reminded me of Hardhome in Game of Thrones. I love also how the series is expanding upon the infected cordyceps communication abilities, their tactics as far as the ability like to sleep in the snow, whether they're encountering and adapt. I love the little network system that they show within the pipes, how like the tendrils of the cordyceps were kind of like weaseling their way through their pipes and picking out, almost sensing and seeing exactly where the members of humanity is now stationed within Jackson. So I like those abilities. So yeah, that's about it. What I disliked about this episode, before I begin yapping, let me just I have no dislike for Caitlin Dever or Bella Ramsey. I think they're phenomenal actresses. There's something that's nagging at me the more I watch, and it's something I like to call presence, or more specifically, screen presence within those actresses. Not their fault per se. I feel it's more along the lines of how they were casted and the showrunners. I feel that because there's such a time difference in The Last of Us Part 2, I'm not seeing those changes reflected on the TV series character actresses. Also in the game, you saw that within Last of Us Part 2, the game. See that Ellie, for the most part, she was taller, she was leaner, her eyes were more mature, she was a little bit more colder. You'll see remnants of little Ellie within those same eyes within the game. When the events unfolded, with Ellie, you see she goes to this murderous rampage and she becomes more believable in her physicality. She's a lot more stealthier, faster, stronger. Maybe I'm kind of sugarcoating this because it's different when you're playing a game versus watching a person portray that same character that you played in the game. But Ellie, to me, watching her and playing her in the game, felt the equivalent of a ninja. To like Abby, Abby's the complete opposite of Ellie. She has a physical commanding presence. Her rugged features make her more believable. I feel like she can punch a hole in the zombie's face. She's more militant and direct. And you can see that in her mere presence in the game. You can feel that as you're playing the character of Abby. It's almost like playing Joel, but it's different in some ways. She's faster than Joel. She seems to be stronger than Joel in some regards. She contrasts with Ellie so much in so many ways, and her journey parallels Joel's and Ellie's. What I find unacceptable in the TV series is that I do not see this time difference reflected in the characters. When I look at Bella portraying Ellie, she still looks like the same Ellie from season 1. With longer hair and a bigger chip on her shoulder. Just calling Ellie a brat. And I think this is a harsh acknowledgement of her physical appearance. When I look at Abby, she looks like a kid, even though the actress is almost 30 years old. And I'm not trying to besmirch or denigrate the actresses in their physical appearance. I just feel that having the appearance of someone who's been through so much, it should be reflected in that character. When I see Joel, when I see Pedro's portrayal of Joel, I can see it in his face. I can see it in just his mere presence. That he, even though he doesn't look one to one like Joel, he's able to embody his character, the physicality of Joel, the mannerisms of Joel in such a way. And I think Bella and Abby are doing the same thing. It's not believable to me. And it seems like it's not being reflected to the greater audience as well. There's some people that like it, but for the most part, I'm not sensing it's believable in some regard. In some ways, how we could have kind of met in the middle and had like a workaround for this in physical appearances, the showrunners and the writers, or whoever, producers, whatever, had Bella and Caitlin hit the gym for a bit, not like get like super buff, but just a little bit more weathered, a little bit more leaner, a little bit more, I'm still seeing like roundness in their faces and stuff like that. I'm not a misogynist. I don't judge people strictly on appearances, but we're talking about a TV show. We're talking about a video game. We're talking about how the industry casts people because of their looks. And I'm not biased to women. There's men that I don't like how they look or what their looks represent as a greater whole. Like Liam Hemsworth, I don't prefer him as the new Geralt. I rather prefer, Henry Cavill, or someone else other than Liam Hemsworth. Not just because Liam Hemsworth is Liam Hemsworth, is because I feel that Cavill had a better range. Aesthetically, he looked like Geralt in some regards. Same thing with the new guy, Aaron Pierre, who's playing Green Lantern. I hate to pull that card, but it's too much falling along the lines of colorism. John Stewart is a dark skinned black man. The writers wrote him specifically as a dark skinned black man, and Aaron Pierre, he's a beautiful guy, But I rather them kind of looked a little bit harder for a dark skinned leading man, and they're out there. Like they're out there. You just have to look. So I don't really like their casting on that regard. So, and with Caitlin Deaver and Bella Ramsey, I it's not like I don't like their casting. It's just that I feel that the show could have done something similar along the lines of House of the Dragon, where we watch these two young actresses portray younger versions of their characters, and then towards the middle part, the later part of season 1, we saw their older versions in different actresses who were able to kind of carry that mantle forward. And at first, it was a little jarring at first, but over the course of the series, I got used to seeing these actresses portray those roles, and then they brought back those younger actresses to in some flashback plots. And I think they could have done the same thing here, where we don't really discard the younger actresses, but we kind of have them in certain scenes to kind of supplement and add dimensionality to the older characters. They could have done that. But I just feel the physicality of Abby and not seeing that on screen and having her say her lines and everybody looking at her with respect and resign. It's just I just don't believe it. It just doesn't hit as hard as first when I see her on screen in the game, and it's immediate. Or when I see Abby, she's not as brash as she is. She's not as brash in the game as she is in the TV series. She doesn't have a lot. She's still wisecracking, but she seems to be more subdued, more colder, more focused, versus the things that they're writing for her character in the TV show. And I guess the writers are meaning to do that so that when the events happen, what they already happened, you see this new dimensionality in her character where she becomes colder. And I'm ready to see that in Bella. And I hope they show that and highlight that. Like they rough her up a bit. Ellie goes through some shit. Abby goes through some shit. And it seems like I'm getting like watered down versions or, PG versions of these characters. Like I didn't see any blood and minor spoilers. I didn't see any blood. I didn't see anybody hit when she saw Joel on the ground. Like in the game, they hit her and they punch her and they kick her and stuff like that. And she's on the ground looking at Joel, and you can see the blood and bruises on her face. I didn't see any of that in the show. And that's kind of one of my main gripes about the show. They take liberties on certain things and not on other things. The things that I like about the show in season 2, when the show does not focus on anything from the game and expands upon that, that's when I love the show. Like to this day, there's not been an episode as great, episode 3, a long time with Frank and Bill. I mean, none of that shit was in the game, right? Just like the siege battle in episode 2, like I love that. I love the expansion of the cordyceps in a gradual evolution that we didn't really see and encounter when we play in the game, and I love that. And I think this has more to do with my huge dislike for Last of Us Part 2, the game, and how the game, for the most part, insists upon itself. It highlights that these characters are more tortured and there's more pain and there's more rage. And then when we get to the final climax, and I'm not going to spoil anything, how the game kind of walks us through the whole parts of revenge and get revenge. And well, the first game dealt with love, the second game deals with hate, and where we were told that we're going to watch this hate kind of build and build to the ultimate climax. And when you get to the climax, surprise, like it doesn't really happen the way you were told it was supposed to happen. And that's also a letdown on top of the jumbled up narrative that is explained in part two. And I feel that's what could have been avoided, should have been avoided in telling that same story in season two. And it feels like the showrunners and writers are leaning more towards telling the same beats from the game into the TV series. And it could have been told a different way. We're setting up Abby to be once again hated. And whereas opposed to, it seems like the show and it seems like the game wanted to tell like Abby's a parallel to Joel and Ellie. Abby is Joel. She's going through the same beats that Joel goes through when she encounters this other character. And I'm not spoiling it, but who those who haven't played the game, um, you see that evolution. You see that, she went through some hardship and then she gains a new perspective in life, a new perspective as being a hero, a new perspective as being someone who survived and helping others. You see her transformation from that, on top of dealing with what she's done to Ellie. And I feel that the showrunners could have told this story, could have started off season two, the most of season two, talking about Abby. We see Abby in conjunction to how she became who she became from a young age. Her father, all events leading up to that tragic event, with her dad. And then literally season two could have ended with her being older. We're seeing that transformation on her body, and her leading up to meeting Joel. And it could have literally, season two could have ended on that scene that we saw in episode two of, Joel, you know, the golf incident, we could have seen that. But instead we're following the same beats as we are in the game. And I think that's a disservice. I think you guys had tons of money, tons of resources, maybe not enough time, because I know Pedro, he's a very busy guy. He's doing all these different things. And maybe that was the reason why we had to kind of, I'm assuming, I'm speculating. I don't know why they had to default to telling the same beats from the game to kind of rush this along so that Pedro could get back to doing what he's doing. But it just feels like it was a wasted effort. It was a lost opportunity, because there are some good golden nuggets in the story of Last of Us 2. But for me, they fell really flat when I saw the incident and then how that execution of that story and that narrative were foretold. It's really bad to kind of judge an entire season, on like 2 episodes, but I feel so far these first 2 episodes are falling flatter than season one's. And maybe it's because of the narrative foundation of Last of Us 2, and how that was a very shaky, very jerky foundation in terms of how they told those story beats, going back and forth, and then, Abby doing what she's doing, and then Ellie, you're playing as Ellie, and then you jump back to Abby, and then you jump back to Ellie, like all these things. I'm gonna have some faith, but I hope it's smoothed out in the TV series. But I so far right now, I was completely disconnected. Knowing the events that happened in the game and then watching the show, I was completely disconnected because of the presence of the characters, because of my dislike for Last of Us Part 2, from a narrative perspective, and then just not being engaged within the story, so to speak, up until like seeing the siege battle, some of those beats there. And then a lot of changes where we had Dina take the place of Joel's brother. It just, I was like, why you're ruining that? Because his brother gets an injury that I don't want to spoil anything. It just did not make sense to me, those changes. I know Dina is kind of like a replacement to Ellie. She's a more kinder, softer version of Ellie or whatever. But that didn't play out in the game. That was something that I was like, I don't get it. I don't get why they did that change. They did what they did. But anyway, um, yeah, my thoughts, my hopes going forward, for the TV show and the game series. I really believe in my heart of hearts, Last of Us should have ended at part one. Like, we should have not gone. We should not have gone beyond that line. It was such a incredible game from a narrative perspective, from a technological perspective. It was almost perfect. I feel that if we're going to continue the story of Ellie from part two, we need to see that she's physically and mentally fractured in some way. She's a survivor. We need to see what the world has done to her in either isolation, because that was one of her worst fears, to be alone, to live alone. And she's a survivor. She's not someone who's going to off themselves. She's not someone like that, but she is, whatever she's encountering, it's literally going to become her. She's going to embody the things that have happened to her physically, and that mental toll. We need to see that, and we need to experience that as a player if we're going to continue their story. If we're going to continue the Abby storyline, minor spoilers. We need to focus on her relationship to Lev, and as Lev, as they grow up, I would assume that Abby is training Lev the same way she was trained. Um, and we need to see that physical appearance on Lev, and see the toll that is taken on Abby, because she was, without getting spoilers, and I probably already spoiled it by just talking about it. So like, it is what it is, but we need to see, how Lev is navigating the world with or without Abby, in some way. And are they willing to go after Ellie? Are we continuing that revenge plot? Are we leaving Lev to just survive on their own? Like, what's going on? So, or we could just totally abandon Last of Us, leave it where it is, and totally pour all of our attention, all of our focus on Intergalactic.